If you could describe radical acceptance and self-care in one word, phrase, or mantra, what would it be?
I am enough. The opposite of scarcity is not abundance. It is having it be enough. And I feel like my life is like that. I'm scarcity, better manifest all these things, better pull in everything, and then I'm drowning in abundance. And then going, oh, gotta get rid of all of this, then I'm in fear and scarcity. And this like constant going back and forth. And the idea that the opposite of scarcity is just enough.
Welcome, Queer Kittens, to Quest, a journey to wellness. I'm V, a two-spirit human, joy influencer, energy worker, and dad joke connoisseur. All pronouns accepted. Our mission with this podcast is to help queer folks find radical acceptance through loving themselves and others in their community. You'll hear stories from folks who have taken their happiness and well-being into their own hands by examining what they've found helpful along the way. We hope this podcast brings you joy where you'll learn, laugh, heal, and grow. Welcome, Queer Kittens and new earballs. It's that time. Holiday season. Dun, dun, dun. I bet some of y'all are wondering why I did the dun, dun, dun. And honestly, it's because, I don't know if it's just me, but the holidays sometimes, they are really exciting, but also very stressful. With the whole idea of capitalism of like, you got to buy all these things and spend all this money to make all these other people happy temporarily. And then, you got to work your butt off to get yourself out of that hole from all that spending you did. For those of us that aren't sitting on a whole bunch of disposable income. And then, there's the other factor of religion coming into play. There's all of that Christ Mass. Don't call it Xmas because some people might get upset. But, it's just trying to figure that all out. And we're queer. All of that to say, we have an awesome guest coming up. Her name is Bex Mui, and she offers something that mixes all of these things together so beautifully. She offers something I've never heard of, that I never even knew it existed, that you could be queer and you can love God, you can believe in the practices of Jesus, and you can chill with Buddha all at the same time. Like, there's this really beautiful thing that she has created called House of Our Queer. And she also wrote a book, y'all. And I'll tell y'all a little bit more about that later. But I grew up in the church, and first Catholic, then Christian, and had no idea there was anything else besides that. I thought I had to follow all of these things, otherwise I'm going to burn in hell. Especially being queer, and then cut off all my hair and started presenting myself more mask, and then going to Christmas mask. That was terrifying. And Prop 8 was out at the same time. Don't even want to go there. That was the scariest moment of my life. But real talk though, the holidays could be a lonely time for some folks. Not only because, some people can't be with their family. Some people don't have the family. Some people can't afford to woo the family. Some people can't afford to even go home. There's that experience to that. It could be lonely. It could be really exciting. And I think that what we have here in this episode today, this information, I hope that it really just makes you feel a little less lonely, and you find this new community that just wraps their arms around you and makes the holidays just a little bit better. And without further ado, Bex Mui.
Hi everyone, I'm Bex Mui, she, her pronouns. I'm a queer witch, energy worker, and spiritual organizer. Aries Cap Rising, Sag Moon, and a fun queer fact about me, I'm a scuba diver and a proud fish owner.
Ooh, what kind of fish?
I've got a beta, and I have another tank that has little ruby tetras.
I will be Googling those later.
They're so cute.
Before we get into it, I was trying to reminisce on how we met. And in my phone, you are listed as Beck's Spirituality.
I love that so much. In my phone, you're V Mango, because I'm pretty sure that we've known each other, right? We've been in community, but I think the time when we really connected, I have like this memory of being on the dance floor at Mango and having this deep conversation about spirituality. I feel like we were kind of doing this thing where we were circling and saying like, I'm thinking about this thing. Are you thinking about this thing? Like, I'm kind of talking about this thing. Are you talking about this thing?
That definitely tracks. Because I do this thing where, same as you, is I put the name and then I put where I met them or like the significance of why I have the phone number. And mango, which for people who don't know what mango is, it is not my favorite fruit, although I do like it. It's actually one of the longest running lesbian parties in the West Coast, and it's held at El Rio in San Francisco. Just in case.
Absolutely. Important information. And I feel like that conversation for us happened before shelter in place, like in the old world. And especially then, I feel like there wasn't a time when folks were really doing a lot of this work. And it was this way that we were popping up at parties and finding each other to be like, what is your wellness looking like? What's your spiritual thing? Like, are you still thinking about this? Really, like the community of finding folks then is so different than now when folks, I think, are really way more open and like the conversations around spirituality are really connected with queerness in this way that I was hoping for. And it's so amazing to see. But I feel like for our roots and when we first got connected, it really wasn't happening.
I definitely agree on the spiritual level of folks prior to COVID, prior to quarantine, because COVID is still a thing, to now, because I felt like before it was kind of like a secret society, because not everyone goes to the club like, let's go talk about some hard shit and healing. Let's here, come on, darkness, hold my hand. We're going to the club.
I know, which is what I love so much because I so believe in the sacredness of the queer dance floor. And it is a space in which has held and continues to hold me in dark times, in great times, in grief and celebration. And yeah, I need there to be more. And I love getting to enjoy that space with folks that I know are also in like larger healing journeys as well.
Definitely. It was like a secret society before, and now everyone's just like, we about it. We're here for it.
Now it's standard practice. Yeah,
exactly. It's what you do to get your queer card.
No, totally. It is such a wild thing, though. I remember in 2016, I actually wrote a blog that was like coming out as queer and spiritual. Whoa. It felt like you're saying like secret society. Like it felt like this closet. Like it really felt like this moment that I was like, am I going to merge these worlds? Am I going to share about this? Especially I was really deep in just liberal queer activist spaces. I was doing national queer advocacy, and it just felt like as far away as you could get from spiritual work. And it's really beautiful to kind of see I now see them as this sort of like infinity sign of feeding each other and feeding back to each other. But it's interesting. It's not that far in the distance, but like energetically and spiritually and as a species, it feels so far away from where we were. I really just appreciate that, like where we are now.
Speaking of signs and energy, we were text messaging about just the alignment of this recording and everything. And you had mentioned how excited you are because the new moon just moved into Scorpio. And I wanted to break that down, but I felt to save this for the podcast because I was just like, what does it mean?
Yes, I just love when things time out. We were trying to figure out when to do this recording, and it just so happens to be days after the new moon in Scorpio. And I believe in kind of like divine timing, right? So the new moon in Scorpio, the TLDR is like every month or so, there's a new moon and a full moon.
What's TLDR?
So when I'm thinking about it, too long, don't read.
Oh.
The short version is about every month there's a new moon and a full moon. And so one of the spiritual practices I have and that I follow with House of Our Queer is those cycles. So it's about 2 weeks to get to a new moon, then to get to a full moon. And there's some ritual practices around that. The new moon this month was on Monday, and it was in Scorpio, and we're in Scorpio season. So it just encompassed all of those Scorpion traits, that is darkness and passion and the shadow sides, the things that we are not looking at but holding very deeply. And so to have a conversation around spirituality and the queer community and to kind of bring that to light, there's this new moon is this chance of planting new seeds, of these new beginnings. And so I just felt like the timing for this was really perfect.
Yes. It seems that a lot of the alignment has been happening with our last guest. The season and the episode was their birthday, and we had no idea.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
I love those things.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we got your message with the new moon, and I was like, look at all of this. This is fantastic.
Synergy.
Yes. I've read your book. Let me not lie. I listened to your book.
Also read it.
Yeah.
To me, at least, as an audiobook fan.
Yeah, definitely, because I can get 2 things done at once. Whether that's driving, whether that's cleaning. Like
doing my dishes. Yeah, that's my favorite audiobook time. Yeah.
I thought your upbringing was really, really like interesting, because I've known you for however long I've known you, and I never knew these things about you. So I thought, would you mind sharing a little bit about your upbringing?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a really important point for the book. I wanted to just share my experience and kind of my journey around spirituality. And to do that, I really had to share where I came from and those roots. And it was really fun for me to get to dig back and go there, even for myself. I'm from a small town off of Massachusetts. Actually, I'm very East Coast by origin, even though I live in Oakland now. I'm biracial, Chinese and Polish. And my father, we're Chinese from Guangzhou originally. But my grandfather, actually, when he was 9, was sold down to Malaysia to work on plantations there. And my dad and his 7 siblings were all born in Malaysia, mostly in Penang, and are all still there except for my dad. So he came over for grad school to America and met my mom. They worked at the same Chinese restaurant in the 70s.
So cute.
And my mom's in big Polish immigrant community in Massachusetts. And so I was raised, I wouldn't say like between these 2 worlds, because I didn't have a lot of access to my father's family or that culture when I was growing up. I was really raised in like a big Polish immigrant group. I have a lot of cousins. My mom's also one of 6, so I've got a big family there. And in that way, we were raised Roman Catholic, very culturally, as much as it was religion. My babci, or my grandma, I was raised really close with. She lived in the next town over, where my mom was born. Very small town roots in that way. But there was always this space for my dad. Catholic churches are very tight in what they believe. There's a lot of this is us and this is everyone else. And as much as I was raised that way, one of the gifts of being biracial was that I also had this other example with my dad. There's this pause. There's this other way to be good, to be a person, to be living adult life. And even though we didn't really have a lot of language for that, it really meant a lot to me.
That's awesome. Showing you the options and not just being like, this is the way and the only way.
The way, the true, and the light. That's the cash. Yeah, absolutely.
I was raised
so it was
in
like,
that
yes,
too.
And.
Yeah.
Yes, and.
Yeah, the very my way or the highway
my way,
mentality.
Yeah. My way or the hell way is really how I was raised. Yeah.
Same.
And yet, I really give my mom credit for that. She's a very devout Catholic. She still goes 5 I guess 6 days a week. She goes to weekly mass. She goes on the weekend and to the same church where I was raised. And yet made this decision, like married my dad. There was never tension or fight that he didn't come to church with us. There was like, she like understood in her own way how to make peace, how to be a part of a system, even as strict as it is, but also have some space and some balance like for yourself and for your family.
That's incredible. I always felt guilty not to go to church after I came out the closet and just became who I was and realized the churches were putting so much money into Prop 8. I was just like, no, I don't want to go. I finally put my foot down. I was like, they don't even want me there.
Yeah. I have a strict no giving money to churches. I do occasionally go, but I have a very strict, that collection basket can come around 15 times, but I shall not. That's not for me. So I think we all make our own, the rituals that feel right for us.
Yeah, that's true. You talked a lot about like balance between your mom and your dad, and your mom teaching you the Roman Catholic way, your dad being like, look, there's also this other way. What would you say is like your aha moment to your own journey of wellness?
I love the idea of there being this, like, I think of like this light bulb turning on, in this aha moment. I'll say for me, I think just being raised so strictly with faith in a religious practice that was also really modeled in like my family. I feel like I've been on a wellness journey. Like I've been on a spiritual journey since I was baptized, like since I was in human form.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the aha moment for me in my current spiritual journey, and like when I think about what led me to House of Our Queer, what led me to the work that I'm doing now, it really was burnout. It was a moment. It was 2020. I call House of Our Queer my pandemic truth. Right? It was like the thing that came to me in all that quiet, and the thing that I needed all of the distractions of the world to shut down while we faced our own unknowingness and mortality to put into action. And I launched it 2021, January. For me, part of that was also when I left. I was doing full-time national advocacy for LGBTQ folks through a nonprofit org. I had done that for 5 years. I would say it was like the spiritual work I was doing. It was like where I felt called. And I was facing just such incredible burnout, and realized that when I left that job, that was kind of my string. It was my aha. It's like a low point that led to this high point. It's like, I can't do this anymore. Like I can't not find a way to have the work that I'm passionate about also be feeding me and my spirit and like lifting me back up in the same way that I'm giving out.
From the moment of your aha to the moment now, would you say that you've gained some like any routines or resources or tools that like you found helpful for you along that journey?
Absolutely. Part of House of Our Queer when it started was really just external accountability for the things that I wanted to do for myself. And now I do them. So for example, I was mentioning the moons. That was something I decided. I partly launched House of Our Queer because I really wanted to have a way to keep track of time. I was feeling that post-school setting, and not having a regular 9-to-5 job, I didn't understand how time kept passing. And it comforts me. This is very like Catholic roots, I will say, and probably New England roots, but I love and feel really comforted when I can keep track of time. And so I follow the moon. One of the reasons I started Queer Church, which is an IG Live that I do almost every Monday, was just so that I could keep track of time. I wanted to be able to say, okay, what is going on astrologically this week? What is a tarot card that I can use to think about some external advice for the week ahead? What are some queer quotes or poems that I can bring in to just meet whatever this moment is and refresh for myself? And then in doing it as an offering, it's this way that both holds me accountable, but also helps me feel connected to other folks, which is something that really lights me up when I'm doing rituals as well.
I heard a lot of like, you were in that 9 to 5, you were in that burnout, and now you're moving forward. You wrote a book, you're having House of Art Queer. I was wondering, for folks that feel off balance, that feel like they're getting close to that burnout, or that they're just with the constant grind of it all, feeling more and more distance from themselves, do you have a particular like wellness practice that would help people feel more connected to themselves?
So one of the core principles for House of Art Queer, and when we're thinking about supports, is to try to balance, I call them spiritual tools, but supports is the same, balance ones that are internal and external. So for example, like self tools, internal tools that I really love are journaling, therapy, nature time, following the moon, like I mentioned, tarot pulls. I'm really into creating my own also like spells and incantations or mantras. So anything that's like, hey, I have time to think about what is going on for me in my internal world, how I'm feeling, how my balance is, how my connections are. And sometimes it doesn't even matter what you do. It's carving out that time. It's leaving that space for you to think and be present with that. And then I like to balance that with some external support. So just something that helps us remember that we're small, helps us remember that we don't have to have all the answers, that we can't know everything, that we are like surrounded by all of our ancestors, chosen in bio, and that there are like cosmic forces in the universe, however you think of it, that are conspiring in our best interest all the time.
Would you feel comfortable sharing any of those mantras that bring
sure.
you back to you?
One of my mantras is let it be easy. I say all the time, let it be easy. I love to suffer. I love to do things the hardest way. There is not a lesson in my 20s or my early 30s, I'll admit, that I learned the easy way. I was just like, what is the most of my own labor that I could do to make this thing happen or to learn this lesson? And so, yeah, a mantra I try to give myself all the time is just let it be easy.
And I know starting your own business is not easy. And I'm curious, what finally got you to start House of Art Queer?
One thing was leaving my job without a plan, the spaciousness and time that brought. And I will say, that was part of knowing that it was time. I guess part of it was just like listening to burnout, listening and trusting. I started House of Art Queer with the intention of, and with the practice of also doing something professionally. I do LGBTQ consulting and I was focusing in that way. And then I had House of Art Queer as my, like a spiritual project, I'd say at the beginning. And writing the book has really shifted that for me. This year, I took a 3-month road trip and book tour and was on the road and across the country from March, April, and May. It's what I needed. It was this time when I physically had to say, I cannot take a client. I can't do this other work. I can only do this work. And that really shifted my energy and my focus. And I guess like just saying yes. And I've been doing it since then, full time.
Nice. And for those who don't know what House of Art Queer is, do you mind sharing a little bit more about what it is?
House of Art Queer is the name of, I would say, the framework by which I do all my queer spiritual organizing and offerings. I like to call it a spiritual play space. Really, the vision for House of Art Queer is to be, if not in physicality, in energy, a home for all of us. It's centered on the specific needs and the experiences of queer and trans people And it is meant to be a place for resources, for spiritual guidance, for energetic guidance and affirmations, and just ways for us to come together and kind of navigate a world of intersectional hate and instead come together and like recharge.
I love that, especially with everything that's going on in the world, with holidays and all of that. It's like a little light shining through the darkness is what you're providing. And
that's the goal.
You know, I was really curious. I know that holidays is hard. We were having a side discussion about reclaiming the holidays, and I kind of wanted to dig on your brain a little bit more on that.
It's one of my favorite offerings for House of Our Queer. One of the core principles is why reject when you can reclaim? Especially like activists, as folks who are always looking at systems and understanding history and our own history and uncovering truths. I love that we are a group of folks that are always learning and not just taking things for granted and doing things as they've been done. And at the same time, sometimes when we're learning and we're pushing things away that are no longer serving us, we aren't sure what to put in its place. And so we can push, and then we just are left feeling empty. And I think that really comes up, especially at the end of the year holidays. For me, and I watch a lot of the affirmations that I do and the work I do for House of Our Queer is noticing our nervous systems as a community. And for us, holding our breath from October, Halloween until the end of December really isn't working for us. It's not a system. It's not a practice. It's not a ritual that is setting us up for a new year, regardless if you really care about the Gregorian calendar or not. Like, there is this system. And, the end of the year holidays is also a time when, as a government, we have the most breaks. We might have the most vacation time and the most, at least, expected work for us. And so if we aren't able to build into that time some moments of appreciation and joy and excitement, we're also really missing out and kind of doing ourselves a disservice. I'm really interested in thinking of ways to help folks really do their own exploring of what they can look forward to. And sometimes that does come with really looking at a holiday you were raised with. I think for all of us, I like to say we're in like a Christian flavored government. And so even if you aren't Christian or you weren't raised or have your own personal, like a familiar reckoning with Christmas as a holiday or that time of year, we all kind of do. And so some of the addressing, some of the unlearning, some of the reclaiming that might work can do wonders. I often talk with House of Our Queer, what is the things that we think are in our past or we think are outside of us, or we're actually just doing a lot of effort to hold a door shut. So like that investigation, I'm really interested in as an energy worker and an organizer. How do we let things in, create our own ways so that we can end our years with some ease? And whatever we can do now, we can do more the next year and more the next year and more the next year.
And would you like to share any resources or events or any offerings of healing that House of Our Queer provides?
So I will say there's a whole chapter to this in my book on reclaiming holidays. So folks that are looking for lots of this journey and lots of ways to learn can find it there. I also have a virtual workshop and a workbook available on my website, houseofourqueer.com. So folks that want to listen and get extra tips can find it there.
Awesome. I'm really curious if you have any offerings of healing with what's going on in the world right now, like a space for people to either decompress or hold someone, hug someone, or however the healing may look for someone else is different. But do you have anything to offer anyone?
We had this conversation where we were talking about kind of the responsibility of holding space right now, especially on wellness and spirituality. And it's something that I'm always thinking about when it comes to House of Our Queer, especially Queer Church. It's a space that I know that folks are coming to start the week fresh and to decompress, to feel affirmed, where we have this break. And at the same time, it feels irresponsible to not talk about current events in my offerings, because if we're here to decompress, to start the week, to, roll off or to affirm each other, to not talk about, and I'll say just specifically now when we're recording this podcast, the genocide that's happening in Palestine is really on our minds. And so it's something that I wanted to offer and address in Queer Church and in my work. And one way that I've done that is that I took a prayer for peace that was written actually by Pope Francis. It's the Catholic Church's Pope and kind of leader, their representation on earth. And one of the things that really brings me joy is in taking Christian and Catholic rooted things that I think do hold a lot of historical energy and ritual, and taking them for us, distributing them like little confetti to our community and reinterpreting them. And so I took that prayer spell and I turned it into a radical queer spell. And it was a spell for peace, calling on goddesses and ancestors, and really trying to take some of that words and language and that hope that's really, I think, shared by all of us, this like hope for peace, this desire for a new way, this end to violence, this end to wars. And so that's something that's been really giving me some grounding as an offering.
Would you have any advice to help someone feel a little bit more grounded?
One thing that I also hope is that folks are just being kind to themselves and to others. There is no right way to respond, in my opinion, to what's happening. And we as animals, as mammals, we aren't used to or designed for witnessing so much violence in the world. And our nervous systems are really trying to grapple with the social media influence of how we understand and receive news of human suffering. And I think there's some really beautiful things about the connectedness that we can have. And there's also some really hard parts of just trying to live and function under capitalism every day in our world. I also share some information around just finding your role in the revolution, your role in activism, and understanding that there are lots of different ways to show up in solidarity, and hoping that folks are being kind and gentle with themselves as they figure out their place.
And what are some that you have for yourself?
For myself, I'm really focusing on healing. I feel really called to offer healing spaces, to offer healing words. Intuiting the prayer spell took a day, took time, and it was a delicious amount of energy and time that I felt really could offer something and offer something for myself. So I would also say that running, to be showing up, and just for myself, I say everything I'm saying out as something I've said to myself. I'll just say that blankly. All the offerings I do are like for me, and then hopefully maybe someone else as well. But yeah, I think just, I want to be doing more. I want to be in more control and more of a place of power in terms of actions I'd like to see in the world I'd like to live in. And I'm not, and I'm just trying to be kind to myself too for doing what I can, and hoping that the healing work that I'm doing in the spaces that I'm holding are somewhat of a help.
Love that. So your self-care is in service of others. That's really it's inspiring. It's inspiring to see somebody put the healing of the collective before themselves, but also it is part of who you are. So, which is really beautiful to see.
Thank you. I do believe our self-healing leads to our community healing, leads to our world healing. I think there is something really, really powerful. And I love just imagining, I visualize all the time, just our community, especially BIPOC, queer and trans folks, just spreading out in this way of resilience and joy and what that can do, in the world.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
You always see queer folks in the pictures on the front line of
absolutely
marches of all radical things happening out there. You always see queer folks right in front.
Okay. That's right.
But in this conversation, the last question I would like to ask you is if you could describe radical acceptance and self-care in one word, phrase, or mantra, what would it be?
I am enough.
Oh gosh, that hits me every time. Every time.
I actually heard this Brené Brown. I was listening to one of their books, and they were talking about the opposite of abundance. The opposite of scarcity is not abundance. It is having it be enough. And it's really got me. I know. I've always okay, scarcity. And I feel like my life is like that. I'm scarcity, better manifest all these things, better pull in everything. And then I'm drowning in abundance, right? And then going, oh, got to get rid of all of this. Then I'm in fear and scarcity and this constant going back and forth.
I love that. I'm definitely putting that one in my pocket.
Please.
Thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me and for this conversation and for all the work that you're doing with Quest.
Oh, thank you. You as well. It was really exciting to be able to bring you on here and shed light on what you're doing, because what you're doing is awesome and completely necessarily needed.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Glad to be in community.
So was I right? Wasn't everything you just heard? I don't know if it was just me, but all the intersectionalities that she has and the way she's navigated through it, and now that she's wrote her book and started House of Our Queer, it's a little less lonely out there, right? I see you nodding your head. Growing up, trying to figure out, am I enough of this? Am I enough of that? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do more of that? And just stopping and being like, you know what? I am enough. Let it be easy. I'm here for it. And also going to be there on Mondays for church or some of the moon rituals. I'm so excited. I hope y'all are excited. And we have a special gift for you on our last episode for this year. Our next one. It's a year-end wrap-up, but also we have Aima, the dreamer, going to be talking about how to advocate for the world and take care of yourself at the same time. Have your notebooks ready, because knowledge is going to be dropped. Thank you again for tuning in to another episode. We love you so much. Happy holidays. We have so much more to explore and share with you on the pod. Tap that follow or subscribe button to get every episode as soon as it's released. And give us a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And join our wellness community on Instagram at Quest Wellness Pod. This podcast was produced in collaboration by Kinoko Chocolates and Puka Puka Creative. Executive producer, Stevie Kwa. Producer, editor, and sound designer, Leah Jackson. Associate producer, Rafaela Landestoy. Original music produced by Basque. His music is amazing. And we can't forget the emotional support by our fur babies, Frankie, Nugget, and Pukalani.